A diamond in the rough, but a diamond nonetheless. Hi, I'm Richard Wayland, owner and broker of the Imagination Brokerage. And today I am pleased and honored to be sitting down with Sandra Morgan, one of the big community leaders and change makers here in East Cleveland, who is running for mayor of East Cleveland. We're going to be talking about her very unique background in international trade, her family legacy of invention and entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about the city of East Cleveland, where it came from, how it got to be the way it is today, and a vision for what it can be in the future. We're going to talk about options and opportunities and all the incredible things that are already happening and can happen for investment and entrepreneurship and the arts. So without further ado, Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
First things first, I just want to hear basically just from a complete outsider layperson's perspective who doesn't know who the Morgan family is, who doesn't know anything about the Cleveland area. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Sandra Morgan, and I am a proud citizen of the city of East Cleveland, a lifelong Clevelander really, except for a short stint that I did on the East Coast. But I was happy to return to the Midwest and embrace my Midwestern roots. I've worked in this region for more decades than I care to share, but for quite a long time. With a background in international business, development work, and network weaving, collaboration building in the region.
I mean, you've got some incredible background in, more recently, at least as I've read, working in like finance committees and stuff like that for government, but you also have a lot of experience with dealing with, private enterprise as well. So I wonder if you could, first, I guess, talk a little bit about the international business work and trade work, and then we'll also kind of talk a little bit about government finances and things like that, how those two things
Oh,
come
sure.
together. Yeah.
Well, my love has always been international relations and by proxy international business. Even as a young woman, I was always interested in the world around me and understanding different cultures and understanding how people think and how they do business, how they interact with each other, and how we interact with those people as well. And so it was no surprise then that I found myself in international business.
Sure.
And really very, very thrilled by that. And so I worked for a number of years for the international community, for the World Trade Center here in Cleveland, where I served as the regional manager for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and promoted business in those three regions. And it was the opportunity of a lifetime, quite honestly, to promote bilateral trade and foreign investment. And by foreign investment, I mean people coming here into Northeast Ohio. This area is really rich for investment, and there's a lot of opportunities here. We have so much to offer, and there's so many wonderful natural resources here in Northeast Ohio, not to mention our temperate weather, and other things that make it, I think, ripe for investment. And so anyway, I really enjoyed that work, and I still am involved in the international business community here in Ohio, currently serving as the honorary consul for the United Kingdom in the state of Ohio.
Phenomenal. Now, let's say that I am a small business in Britain who is, for the first time thinking about expanding outside of my country, my continent. Is that approximately the type of person you would, kind of, I guess, be your ideal target customer, something
that
like
is
that?
My absolute favorite group to work with. I enjoy working with small and medium-sized businesses because I find that they're the ones that have the most opportunity but need the most help. And so, we make sure that all of the pieces are in place, right? That they have what I call the holy trinity of accountant, lawyer, and bankers. They have all of that sorted out. that their product lines, if it is a manufactured product or if it's a service, that they have that, well thought out, and they have a strong message, a short elevator pitch, and all of that to bring to the table. And then we look for the appropriate partners and the appropriate setting, for those businesses. So in other words, a great deal of their success really depends upon their location in many cases. And so we make sure that they are situated in the right place, that they have the appropriate contacts, that their business plan and structure is well organized, and then we get on the road.
Now, this is probably a broad overgeneralization, but I was just wondering, like, what do you find that people are looking for? International companies, what are they looking for here? Are they just trying to expand their market from like a sales and retail perspective, or are they looking to like try to do manufacturing here, or is there something else I'm not thinking of? Like, is there other types of support that they're looking for in Cleveland that they can't find in their own country? Like, why are they coming here?
Well, in a lot of cases, they're looking to expand market, right? And so that boils down to sales, right? Sales, drives growth. And ultimately, one of the things that is so important is as their sales grow, let's say they're here in Northeast Ohio, and they're selling their products throughout this region, and as they stretch out and grow into other markets in the United States, then it becomes important to think about manufacturing and investment in the United States, or investment in Northeast Ohio.
Sure.
A little tidbit is that Northeast Ohio, the greater Cleveland area, is 8 hours away from about 60% of the U.S. population. And so you can drive in 8 hours to just about anywhere. Certainly within 12 hours, you can drive just about anywhere, and you're typically a 4-hour flight from just about anywhere in the United States. And so this is a great place to locate if you are, for distribution and for manufacturing.
Wow, very interesting. I mean, because that would be my basic feeling is like my first question, I guess if I'm this foreign business, is like, I think, I guess I would immediately think of the big cities, like, oh, maybe I should go to New York, maybe I should, something, like that. And I guess, Cleveland it's the Midwest. It's it's more centrally located, and to more people.
It's actually more of a benefit to be in Northeast Ohio than it is to be along the coast. To wit, we're a transportation hub, right? So every major railroad goes through Northeast Ohio. There's trucking, obviously. We've got an excellent roadway system, highway system. And again, close to just about every place. We have a strong airport that does a lot of commercial business here. And of course, we've got the Great Lake. And there is, I will say right now, not as much international shipping as we would like, but that is growing. And there is still a great deal of trade and shipping along the Great Lakes, Lake Erie, Superior, back and forth. Sure. And so it's really an excellent place to be. And even from international shipping perspective, if you ship from the Port of Cleveland, let's say, it typically is about 2 weeks faster to ship from Northeast Ohio than it is to ship from one of the coastal ports, just because they have such a backup there that typically once it's loaded in Northeast Ohio, it goes straight through the St. Lawrence and right out, abroad. So it really can cut about 2 weeks off of the shipping process, and in some cases, like $100,000 off the cost of shipping too, which is significant.
It's almost as if this city was founded by people who made shipping and transportation and steel and railways their profession.
They did. As a matter of fact, that was foundational to the success and the growth of Cleveland, specifically in Northeast Ohio in general.
Let's talk about John D. Rockefeller. It's a name that gets thrown around a lot. When we talk about East Cleveland, I want to maybe talk about him, talk about this neighborhood and about, I guess, like the lasting legacy or impact of people like that in the city?
Well, Cleveland was a town of a lot of business, a lot of invention, a lot of action in general. And John D. Rockefeller was at the center of it all. He was at that time the richest man in the world, right? He was the 19th, 20th century Elon Musk, I guess, right?
Sure,
richest man in the world.
Yeah.
And you're actually sitting in a Rockefeller home. All right. And so John D. Rockefeller lived in this region. He lived in Cleveland for a good deal of his life. And his summer home was here in the Forest Hills neighborhood of East Cleveland. A beautiful, wonderful home, surrounded by lots of land. And he decided at one point, we won't go into the details, but he had a disagreement with the city government. And so he decided to move to New York and left this property to his son, right, who was Junior. And Junior decided to follow in the footsteps of some other developers here in Northeast Ohio and build a community primarily for Standard Oil employees, and others, but for the employees of Standard Oil.
Sure.
So he built a series of junior executive and senior executive homes throughout this community. There are 85 original homes. This is one of them. This is a junior executive home. It's not one of the big ones, but it's still a very comfortable home. And the neighborhood is fantastic and reflects, I think, the ethos of John D. Rockefeller, right? It is surrounded by parks. It is very green,
Yes.
and it's depending upon where you are in the community, from a certain height, you can actually see the lake. You can see Lake Erie.
Oh my God.
So it's a lovely community and one of the many gem communities of the city of East Cleveland.
This is truly one of the most beautiful neighborhoods I've ever seen. The only thing that I think even compares is like the Ambassador Row in Washington D.C.
Wow, that is a big compliment.
Yeah.
But it is a beautiful neighborhood,
Yeah.
and what makes it special, in my opinion, is that not only is the architecture very interesting here, and there are two or three distinct styles. There are the Rockefeller homes, which are on the National Historic Landmark Registry, and then there are mid-century modern homes here, and you'll forgive me if I forget the architect, but there's a very famous architect that developed that group of homes, and then there's some homes that are even a little more modern, that were built probably in the 1960s and 70s, tail end of the 70s.
We don't want to get into all of the, I guess, all the reasons, all the ugliness that goes into a city kind of going into decline. But it is, just like a part of the history of the city that over the last 50 or so years, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of economic changes. Long story short, East Cleveland is one of the lower income places in Northeast Ohio. I guess, first of all, obviously this is something that is central to your, community action. I was wondering if you kind of talk a little bit about, what you're seeing out there today, how people are feeling, what are maybe some of the frustrations that you hear every day, and, just kind of some of your ideas or intentions and goals for it in the future.
Well, I'll tell you that I am still very proud of the city of East Cleveland, despite the decline that we have experienced here in this city. And as you've mentioned, there are numerous reasons for that decline. But in my opinion, past is prologue, and we should be looking ahead and looking forward to a renaissance, if you will, of the city of East Cleveland. There are a lot of benefits to being in the city of East Cleveland, and there are a lot of tools in our tool belt. I feel number one are the people. There are residents who always tell me, I am a proud resident of East Cleveland. I've lived here for 40, 50, 60 years. And that speaks to, I think, the dedication of the residents here who don't want to move. They're sticking with it. They're sticking with their city, right? Despite the ups and downs that we've experienced here, and they're extremely passionate. And there are a number of people here, that many are retired now, but there are architects, there are teachers, educators, engineers. There are all sorts of people here in East Cleveland that bring great skills to the table, and that are really interested in the community. Granted, there is a fair amount of transiency in the city of East Cleveland as well. There are a lot of apartment buildings here, some better than others, quite honestly. But that doesn't necessarily help, with building the community, because people are in, people are out, and they don't necessarily care about the day-to-day issues that that face many of the homeowners here in the city. Again, I look around the city, and yes, there are areas that are significantly depressed, but I see growth in those areas. Sort of like the song, "There is a rose in Spanish Harlem," right? I think that there are some really beautiful areas here, that can really be developed to it. If you get off of Euclid Avenue and you look in some of the communities, there are beautiful homes in East Cleveland, not only in the Rockefeller neighborhood, but Millionaires Row, some of the other areas. There are beautiful homes that are well maintained. Now, of course, there are a few that are not so great, but there's some beautiful homes, and homes that I know that anyone would be proud to live in. There are some homes that are, I think, sadly, have been neglected, but with a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of love, would shine again and would be perfect for new families, and are lovely. I've been in some homes in the Rockefeller, or not in the Rockefeller Center, I'm sorry, in the Millionaires Row area, that are absolutely stunning. One home I went into, and they had 9 fireplaces, and all kinds of beautiful woodwork, and just gorgeous. Gorgeous homes that, again, this one was very well maintained, but there are others that, with a little bit of elbow grease, I think could be absolutely stunning. We have a community theater here in East Cleveland that it's not open at the moment. It's directly across the street from the library. A beautiful building, beautiful facade, and really interesting on the inside too. I'd love to see that space, revitalized with a little bit of work, a little bit of investment. That could be an incredible community theater again, and it dates back to the early 1900s. It could be a community theater. It could also be something else. Anyone with imagination coming in could make it into something fabulous, I think.
Let's do it. Let's look at that theater. I want to see. We find out who owns it, and talk about it. And
it's directly across from the library.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. And the library is stunning. I was very impressed by the library.
Yeah, we have a world-class library here in East Cleveland that has music on Sundays. It is a hub for the community. People are there all the time. The rooms are used quite often, by community groups. It's just a marvelous resource and a gathering place for members in our community. And I think that there are other places that serve that purpose as well. So I think that East Cleveland, and I'm not looking at it through rose-colored lenses either. I'm clear-eyed about the issues that we face, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity here.
Absolutely. And, and it's opportunity that's just waiting for kind of the right inspiration, the right touch. And I believe that you have that. I don't want to embarrass you too much on camera, but I've seen just in my own, my team here, one of the members of our team, kind of grew up in this side of Cleveland. And, I feel like there's a certain, and we'll get into this a little bit more about kind of like the local perceptions versus like coming in with fresh eyes as an
Sure.
outsider, right? But like sometimes, and this happens, and I see this in Los Angeles too, people who are from an area have been saying for so many decades, like, oh, don't go over here, don't go over there. Oh, that place will always be trash. This place will always be, you know, like, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, and then the people who are here can feel kind of hopeless and sort of feel like, oh, no, this place isn't worth saving. This isn't, you know, like I just want to get out of here as quickly as I can,
Sure.
sort of thing. And, you know, and I saw, I won't name him, but, you know, I saw him light up when he heard you speak yesterday and say, you know what, I'm gonna campaign for this lady. I want to be involved in this. Like,
That's fantastic.
As soon as
Yes.
he, like, you know, really got to see you and hear you, just immediately it ignited something else in him about this area, about this city. And so, you know, that's just certain people carry that. And as soon as I saw you, as soon as I heard you speak, and I felt the same. I said, this woman really, she's the real deal. You know, like she's the true believer in this town, and she's going to make a difference here.
Well, thank you for that. And you know, I agree. First of all, you have to believe in what you're doing, and why you're doing it in order to have an impact. And I think our community, you know, it gets a little bit of a raw deal. Like I said, we have, you know, if we take inventory of all of the positives here in East Cleveland, we have an outstanding community of people who are really passionate about this city. You know, we are in the middle of the city of Cleveland, quite honestly, and we have Euclid Avenue is a major thoroughfare that should be leveraged and developed in a way that benefits our citizens, but also could be a great benefit to our neighbors. You know, we still have some facilities that were used for light manufacturing, and also, of course, the beautiful General Electric campus that could be hubs for business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I've had the chance, you know, driving around town and kind of exploring a few different areas. I mean, some of the old, essentially abandoned industrial areas are stunning. You know, again, where I lived in downtown LA for a long time and got to see the arts district kind of go from a handful of old warehouses to being a very thriving, upscale metropolitan shopping, dining, and living area.
Yep, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Exactly,
I mean, I think that we can move in that direction, and it's not going to take a long time in order to really make a change and revitalize the community. You know, I was having a conversation with you know, folks at the Port Authority to talk about foreign trade zones. Right, and is that something that we can create here in the city of East Cleveland? Can we encourage? I mean, we have some facilities. They're warehouses. You know, they're not being used now. They would be perfect because of our proximity to the highways. Right, getting on and off the highways, getting, you know, bringing items from the port, from the rails, what have you, and getting them here, taking advantage of an opportunity to have a foreign trade zone or a couple of places that are foreign trade zones here. That would be fantastic. You know, that creates jobs. You know, it supports industry here in Northeast Ohio. You know, it does all sorts of things for it, and it also is a revenue generator for the city of East Cleveland, right? You know, in terms of taxes and other revenues.
Sure.
And so it's a real opportunity for us, and we have to really think creatively on what it is we're going to do here, and what is that mix going to look like? What is the business mix going to be? You know, what is our housing stock going to look like? A combination of new build, renovation, you know, all sorts of things. What is it that we want to see commercially here? You know, I would love to see a vibrant Euclid Avenue where people are, I mean, most people are within walking distance of Euclid Avenue, right? I mean, you can walk down the hill or up the street and get to Euclid Avenue. It would be marvelous if it was a vibrant commercial district where we had a theater. Of course, we have the library. Maybe we have some other entertainment type centers there, and we have restaurants. We have other, we have commercial businesses, viable commercial businesses. How about an ice cream parlor? Things that we can all
Grocery
take
store.
advantage.
I hear all your constituents are saying grocery store.
Yes, we do really need a grocery store, but what we have to understand, a grocery store, a bank, and these other essential services are driven by numbers. Businesses use analytics to determine where it is that they're going to go and where they want to be, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to consider the analytics right now of the city of East Cleveland. Population density, average income, average spend per individual, and where people actually do their banking. And so, the various banks already know their demographics, how many people bank at Key or wherever, right? And they make their determinations on that. It's up to us to change the dynamic in the city, and so they want to come here. And ditto with the grocery stores. They're thinking about density of shoppers and how often someone will come into the store and all of those things. I mean, we all know that. So never mind. I'm in the weeds now. I'm going to get out of the weeds.
Listen, and listen, I mean, it goes to your background of trying to help a business owner navigate all kind of the strategic questions of, should I come to this community or not?
Yes.
I mean, that's at the end of the day, like, what's in it for me to come here? Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to kind of my audience about is a lot of my viewers are, because I do a lot of sort of like, I guess, beginner real estate investment education. And I'll bet you right now there's a bunch of people out there, hundreds, maybe thousands of people who are watching, who are, their highest ambition is to just flip a house.
Okay.
Right? But, I look at Euclid Ave and I look at some of the opportunities right here and I think, it is really not that much harder to flip a warehouse or to flip even an entire strip mall.
Sure.
Particularly since the cost of a strip mall or a warehouse or even a 50-unit apartment building here is the equivalent of like $1 million or less.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's something where for the cost of a 3-bedroom house in Orange County, someone could come and literally change an entire neighborhood. And that may sound, I don't know, it's still, again, like overly complicated and all that, but, commercial real estate is not that scary. You sign one lease with a tenant who's going to be there for 20 years, 50 years, right? If it's the right kind of tenant. And you don't have to worry about all the headaches. You don't have to unclog toilets. You don't have to, worry about all the different things you have to worry about with residential. And so, I really want to urge and encourage people that if you've ever had any inkling to get into commercial real estate, why not start in a place that's a fraction of the cost of most other markets and make a more meaningful impact on businesses here and on, them being able to create new factories and new headquarters offices and,
which would be marvelous. There is a great deal of opportunity in East Cleveland, and really, I will say that of the buildings, it's almost the pick of the litter, right? I mean, there's there are a lot of great spaces, and there's also a lot of spaces that are just empty. It's empty land that if you're interested in, you could actually build on, and create a space that is unique, is unique to an investor, right? And suits their needs specifically. But to your point, I think there are a lot of places that are commercially viable.
Yes.
That would be fantastic. They're interesting and sometimes a little quirky.
Sure. Sure.
Right? And it would attract a very interesting mix of business, right? If the space is clean and well designed and inviting, there will be a lot of interest in moving into these spaces.
I want to talk to you about something that is sort of an unusual experience, or it's something a little distinctive about my experience so far. And that is that, so in California, gentrification is like a real bad word, and I'd say some communities take to it well and others really resist it, fight it.
Sure.
There's protests, there's, there's signs, there's, And I one of the things that I felt is coming around here, introducing myself. I'm very honest, like I'm a out-of-state real estate investor, and we're trying to essentially fix and flip or fix and rent or whatever in East Cleveland. And by and large, everyone has been extremely friendly and open and encouraging, excited even. And I was wondering if you could kind of shed some light into where you think that comes from. Like, why isn't there more resistance to change?
Well, I think there is some resistance to change. However, the majority of people here recognize that change must come into East Cleveland in order for our city to remain viable. And so by updating and selling homes or updating and renting homes, we are attracting a whole new generation of residents into East Cleveland. And it's absolutely necessary for the survival of this city. Period, point blank. There are those that are worried about, gentrification, and for whom the word is poison. It's kryptonite, right?
Of course.
And their feeling is that they've seen it happen in other areas, and it's a matter of being left out. One of the things that I hope we will do as we grow our city is one of the things I will work on is making sure that everyone is included in the growth and the prosperity of the city. So there are good models and there are not so good models for development and what we will call gentrification. I prefer to call it progress.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. Of course.
So there are ways to make progress that are all encompassing. That include the people who have been in the community for the highs and the lows, right? To make sure that their voices are heard, their concerns are heard, and their interests are recognized and developed as well, all right? And so people who are coming from the outside understand that these are the interests of the community. This is where they'd like to be. We're all going to work together in order to, be that rising tide that lifts all ships.
Yes.
That it's just not the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots sink deeper into disparity and are more discouraged, and that the haves come in and just look at the people who are already there and make assumptions and point fingers. That it's not a model that I'm interested in, and it doesn't have to be the way. There are models throughout this country and around the world where progress is made, and it's all encompassing, right? It includes everyone in the community.
I remember when I first arrived at USC to go to college in 2004. There were just like parts around the campus and further down south and west of there that like everyone was just saying, oh, you don't go there at all, don't just don't like roll up your windows and lock your doors if you're going to be driving through those areas. And and Compton is one like very, I guess, internationally famous example of like a city within a city, like a small city with its struggles kind of within a greater city of Los Angeles that it wasn't always easy, and overcoming some of the local perceptions of that was, I think, probably the hardest part of, transforming it. That, now, I remember when I went to school, like homes in Compton were probably between $100,000 to $200,000. Now they're $600,000, $750,000 in just a span of 20 years. So as I kind of tell people, and as some, very famous investors will tell you, sometimes the secret to a successful investment is to just do the opposite of what everybody else is doing, And anyway, I just use that as an example to just kind of show, like, I feel like I look around East Cleveland and I get that feeling of Compton 20 years ago, or maybe less, with the right leadership and the right initiatives and the right types of investment, we can get there pretty quickly. And so, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned yesterday at your event that, and East Cleveland isn't alone out here either, right? There's other cities nearby like Euclid that are also small cities dealing with similar economic issues, similar real estate questions. So I wonder if you could kind of talk a little bit about I guess, some of the, communities like this, some of the unique struggles they deal with, any other kind of experiences that, you've seen examples of people who, I guess, pulled it off and made it work, and how you think, East Cleveland can get there too?
Well, I'm going to say that East Cleveland is considered an inner ring suburb of the city of Cleveland. We're one of the first, if not the first, suburb that was, codified in Northeast Ohio around Cleveland. And so, naturally, there is a lot of aging here, aging infrastructure, aging housing stock, aging population, all of that. That being said, there are other communities who have managed to successfully avoid some of the pitfalls that we have succumbed to here in the city of East Cleveland. And to your point, they have either maintained their housing stock or created new housing in the community, maintained a strong manufacturing or business community, which is critical. I mean, that's critical to the infrastructure of the city, maintaining interest in the city and that sort of thing. You talk about Compton. I prefer to think about East Cleveland more along the lines of Harlem, right? I lived for a number of years in New York and lived in Harlem and lived in Washington Heights. Both communities were, I thought were fantastic and fabulous, rich with history, lots of culture, lots of texture. And by texture, I mean, it was multicultural. It had, waves of history associated with it. It was culturally fantastic and a rich place to be. And it was just a really cool place to be. It had a fantastic vibe, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And I see East Cleveland in that same vein. Sure. There were some areas in Harlem and in Washington Heights too that were a little down on their luck, right? I mean, there were some areas that really needed some development, needed some help. Housing was not that marvelous. And people were struggling, right? There was all sorts of things going on. There were any number of social ills that were being addressed in the community. There was at that time a scourge of drugs. At that time, it was cocaine related. When I lived in Harlem and in Washington Heights, there were a lot of the same issues there that we're facing here in East Cleveland now. So I'm no stranger to these issues, to issues of population drain, of people who need lots and lots of services, whether it's mental health issues or drug-related issues, or simply finding a job, whatever it happens to be. And also an aging housing stock, but a housing stock that, if you will, is uneven. Some really beautiful and fantastic places, and then some others that are not so fantastic. And yet, investment in both of those communities, although it's taken a little bit of time, the investment has been really fantastic, and it has been very thoughtful, and they created an approach and a plan that grew these communities in ways that, again, embraced the people that were already there, that supported new people coming in, became a much more multicultural community, and so there were new and different perspectives that were there, and to the enrichment of all, which I think is an important aspect of building any community. And if you visit Harlem now, or if you visit Washington Heights now, these are communities that have, again, had a very rich past, a rich cultural past too. I don't know, as a sidebar, Washington Heights was a very Jewish community. It was a Jewish neighborhood, and a lot of the businesses along their downtown or their main thoroughfare were still geared towards a Jewish community, or they may not have been geared towards a Jewish community anymore, but they were still owned by Jewish shopkeepers and that sort of thing. It really enriched the community. right? And then the next wave was Hispanic. And people from Dominican Republic and elsewhere came into the community. They brought their own vibe to the community and just created a rich tapestry that was fantastic for everyone. And again, this rising tide lifted all ships.
Yeah.
So the people that were living there initially benefited from the new businesses and from the upgraded housing stock and that sort of thing. And new people came in, brought their perspectives, brought their cultures, and just really enhanced those communities greatly.
I mean, and maybe this is just the sort of people that you attract to you. But at the event yesterday, and it wasn't just you kind of launching your campaign for mayor. It was also there were 3 other people that were announcing their candidacy for city council. And hopefully you all win. You all get to work together on this. And the types of people that were there were all so passionate, so friendly, so open and welcoming to a Chinese American, a Mexican American, white and black. We've got the whole, the little portion of the United Nations here in our investment group. And,
that's right.
We come into this restaurant not knowing exactly really what to expect. And just everyone was so unbelievably welcoming and neighborly and again, and very encouraging, as I said a little bit earlier.
And that's the thing about East Cleveland is that there's a fantastic community here. The residents of East Cleveland are passionate about the city and want the city to succeed. There are detractors. I'm going to say that a lot of those detractors are outside of the community. They don't know East Cleveland, right? They don't know the people that are here. They only know what they see as they're driving through, right? And they assume. They make a lot of assumptions about the people in the city of East Cleveland, which is frankly unfair. Again, there are a lot of people who have fantastic backgrounds. They're very interesting, and there's some real characters here too, and I mean that in a good way, right? Some really very interesting people. I think that it's a great community to explore and to invest in and to live in.
I mean, it's interesting how sometimes an outsider perspective is really needed. Someone who has that perspective, who's seen multiple neighborhoods in similar circumstances, rise up and develop. I mean, it's like for you to be able to say that this is, where you're from, but you also still got a good body of experience out in actually all over the world.
Correct.
Because you actually traveled back and forth to Europe a bunch too as well, right?
That's right. Well, when I worked as the regional manager for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at the World Trade Center in Cleveland, my job, frankly, was to develop business, to help our small and medium businesses here to develop business overseas, right? To be able to sell their products or their services in, I felt like I was queen of the world because I had the largest region, really of my colleagues, geographically and from a business perspective.
Sure.
Although now I don't know because China is such a powerhouse, but still, did a lot of business overseas and conversely worked with companies abroad to come into the United States, to come specifically into Northeast Ohio, but to develop their business here so that they could branch out into the United States. So we used, Northeast Ohio as kind of their jump-off spot, or they landed here, and this was their jump-off spot in order to do business all around this country, and of course to explore Canada, Mexico, Central and South America as well, because this is the Americas after all, right?
Of course.
But it was, and I don't care where you are in the world, the business concerns, the business issues are all the same, right? They're concerned about, development. They're concerned about their, where they are seated, so to speak, their space. They're concerned about their markets and how to encourage and grow those markets. And I think that for me, that international experience is invaluable because it taught me how to work with a variety of cultures, a variety of perspectives, and to help understand, what people are looking for, when they're developing their business.
Sure. And, we don't have to get too deep into this, but I was wondering if you could just kind of touch quickly on like how you ended up becoming a consul to the UK and what that role has been like for you over the years.
Well, it has been the honor of a lifetime, of course, to be the honorary consul for the United Kingdom here in the state of Ohio. And my role is really threefold. It is to develop business, bilateral trade, and foreign investment. This time, in both directions. It is to help build cultural understanding between the UK and the state of Ohio. And then, of course, to protect His Majesty's citizens when they're in the great state of Ohio. But my primary role is and has been to develop business. It's a role that I've had for now 23 years. And it has been really exciting. And again, it came about because while I was at the World Trade Center, I felt that one of our best markets was the UK. Common language, common law, and common values. And because of that, it was very easy to make those connections, between people. While I was there, I developed markets. A lot of people think of the UK as being a market of, like Sherlock Holmes or the Queen, or, it's
Sure.
kind of an antiquated view of the UK, when in reality, it is one of the most cosmopolitan societies in the world. And London, I think, is number 2, even more cosmopolitan than New York, in terms of their ethnic mix in London and Manchester and Birmingham and other cities. And so to be able to do a little bit of myth busting as well and help people here understand that the communities in the UK are very broad. And there are a lot, you can meet a lot of different needs doing business in the UK. So too, coming to the US, there are a number of constituencies here. Even in East Cleveland, there are a number of constituencies that one can consider, for business purposes. It is not a monolith, right? And so aside from the demographics of young, old, Black, white, Latino, what have you, there are lots of perspectives to take into account right here in our own city. But knowing all of that in Europe, in the Middle East, which was a very different place to do business, very different, ideas. And as a woman going into the Middle East to promote business was sometimes quite a challenge. And yet we made it work, right? And the same in Africa, being able to do business in Africa and help bring companies there. As a woman, I was all at once very American and became quite a feminist, I guess, there, because cultural mores are different. And that is not bad. They're just different, right? And so bringing that literal world of experience to the table, I think is really going to be a great benefit in helping to develop, the city of East Cleveland, and literally bring the world to East Cleveland and bring East Cleveland to the world.
Can I ask you just a silly question?
Sure.
Just like this, probably not going to make it into the final edit, but I just want to ask you a silly question. What do you find, or maybe just compare and contrast, I guess, the difficulty of being a woman in the Middle East versus being Black in America?
Gee, you know what? I guess I never really thought about that, if I'm being honest. Because, I'm going to say this. Number one, I'm very comfortable being Black in America. I know that there are lots of challenges, and we all face, periodically, I'll be in Costco and someone will turn to me and say, where's the coffee pods? And, I have to remind them that I don't know because I don't work there, or being in line somewhere and someone said to me once, oh my God, were you just on vacation? You've got a beautiful tan. And I was like, yes, it's a beautiful tan that I have all year round. Thank you. There sometimes things are interesting, I'll just
Sure,
say.
sure, yeah.
But I am very comfortable in who I am and very comfortable in my skin. And you know what, I don't even think about that because I've always been taught that cream rises to the top and you can do anything that you want. And
Sure.
so I've, quite honestly, I've never taught or thought even 2 times about being oppressed or anything along those lines. Now, I will tell you, I'm aware of it. I mean, I went to school when I went to school, I was in a predominantly white environment, and there were challenges there. And certainly learning from my grandfather, who did some amazing things as an inventor and an entrepreneur and a civic leader here in Northeast Ohio at a time where African Americans were not valued at all. And he was a fighter. He made his way and stood his ground and took up his space, here in Northeast Ohio. In a great way, and is recognized today, for his contributions to society. And that's the model that I've always followed, is that, my grandfather with a 6th grade education, and knowing, the cultural norms of the time, and the racism of the time, still broke through and made his way. And so there's absolutely no reason whatsoever for me not to be able to make my way and make my mark as well. So to that point, I never really, I guess I did, but I've never felt encumbered by being African American at all. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of my culture, proud of my history, and you know what? I'll do anything that I want. I'm not worried about it in the least.
Oh, yeah.
Doing business in the Middle East was a learning experience. And I think that, the men primarily that I had to deal with in the Middle East they were respectful, every once in a while dismissive, but the end game was, do I want to help these companies do business, or am I going to, am I standing up, I am woman, hear me roar? The goal was to get business completed and to get those companies where they wanted to be. And so making sure that was my number one priority. Again, I didn't feel any kind of way. It was just time to carry on.
Sure. I think to an extent, there's one thing about, that people will judge you based on your appearance, but then the moment you open your mouth and start talking, it immediately becomes apparent who and what you are and what you're about, And so, I guess I'm not surprised that you haven't, you don't feel that great of a sense of resistance when you speak, because I tell you, like, when you speak, it's captivating.
Wow, thank you. I mean, that's the first time I've heard that. That's fantastic. But again, I grew up in a household where we were instilled with confidence.
Yes. And
we were told that we could do anything that we pleased.
Yes.
Now, in all honesty.
Everybody here knows the Morgan family. For those people of mine who are in California who've never heard of Garrett Morgan,
sure.
I was wondering if you could just kind of give just a little quick history lesson for them.
Sure. Well, I'm very proud of my heritage, of my family legacy. My grandfather is Garrett A. Morgan, and he was born in Kentucky, but lived most of his life here in Northeast Ohio. And he was an entrepreneur, an inventor, and a civic leader here in Northeast Ohio. My grandfather never considered himself an inventor. He was an entrepreneur who was a problem solver.
Sure.
And in solving problems then, he managed to get the patent for the tri-positioned traffic signal, now recognized worldwide as the red, yellow, and green traffic light. He invented the Garrett Morgan safety hood, which was the precursor to the modern day gas mask and used by police, fire, and military, outfits around the world. He had a couple of smaller inventions. One that was for the hair care industry. He invented a type of hot comb that women of color still use sometimes in their hair. And he had as an entrepreneur then, he had a hair care business, which, we could talk about it was very successful, and it ended only in 1976, and sold his products primarily along the East Coast. He did a lot of everything. I mean, he sold, of course, the safety hoods. He established a country club for people of color here in Northeast Ohio. He founded a newspaper for people of color here in Northeast Ohio, and he also ran for city council back in the 1930s when it would have been unheard of. But, his platform was, everybody in the city of Cleveland pays taxes, including, African Americans, and our voice matters.
Sure.
Yeah. And so now you see why I'm kind of fearless in that regard. I'm not particularly bothered by color. I'm just not. I think that I feel like I've been raised to look forward, to look ahead, to be thoughtful and progressive and intentional, in my movements, and to be the best Sandra Morgan that I can be, and to reflect well on the Morgan name. So there you have it.
That's wonderful. It's funny. I mean, you really feel the sense of Ohio being about invention and inventors. Yes. I think it was like turn of the last century. There was a saying that would go around that the first step to becoming a great inventor is to be born in Ohio.
Well, and to that point, when my grandfather moved to Cleveland, specifically, it was 1895, and this was the place to be. Yeah. There was, General Electric was going strong. Rockefeller was here. There were lots and lots of inventive and entrepreneurial people here, specifically in Cleveland, and he wanted to be here in the middle of all the action. Yeah, so that's why he came to Cleveland.
And I look at Euclid Avenue today, the little downtown area in East Cleveland, and I see all the opportunities for artists and entrepreneurs and people who are trying to take a big risk, trying to take that big plunge, and are looking for essentially an affordable way to do it. Like the really, really fancy neighborhoods is not where you see the greatest amount of innovation.
That's right. And to that point, I mean, that is why my grandfather came here, is because Cleveland was, it was a growing city. And of course it had, the big industrialists with lots of money, lots of capital and that sort of thing. But it was also a little rough and tumble, right? I mean, there were opportunities to get in where you fit in and to make your mark, which is what he did.
Exactly. No, and I just, I think about it because we were talking earlier about models for how other neighborhoods were able to turn things around, right? And I think a lot about the various arts districts in Los Angeles. Like for our city, it was always first the artists moved to downtown, and then once that became too expensive, they moved to about where I was in South LA. And then once South LA became too expensive, then they moved, further south still to some of the other, to Inglewood. And, so it's like wherever the artists go, then you start getting like the cool cafes and the cool bars.
That's
and the
right.
Cool retail stores and the galleries and all stuff like that. And then obviously at that point, then all of a sudden all the hipsters show up and blow the whole thing up. And then, the artists and entrepreneurs continue to find places that are ripe for opportunity.
That's right. And I think East Cleveland is ripe for that opportunity. The creative class really does help to develop communities in significant ways. They They bring creativity, they bring new business ideas, but they also bring the coffee houses and the tea houses and restaurants and theaters and galleries and other things to the community that are really enriching. And also, once that is all happening, it is just a matter of time, before other businesses and other people come into the community.
Whenever we talk about affordable housing, I think some people just have this negative perception of slumlords and, like halfway houses, people barely scraping by. But guess what? Lots of people need affordable housing,
That's right. And that's actually that is a misconception of what affordable housing is.
Right.
Affordable housing really refers to middle America, and being able to afford a home for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. The average cost of a home in the United States right now is north of $400,000. That's the average.
Right.
Northeast Ohio is eminently affordable because I think the average, housing cost here is closer to $275,000, $300,000, and that is affordable housing.
Sure.
That is generally considered affordable housing.
Right.
In Northeast Ohio and in East Cleveland in particular.
Sure.
You can beat that by a country mile.
Oh, sure.
You can. There are some houses, of course, that need more work than others.
Right.
But you could move into almost a turnkey house anywhere in East Cleveland for well below $300,000.
Sure.
And so, this is a great place to look for investment in housing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can live very comfortably here for, I guess the equivalent of like a local starter home for $100,000, and we
easily.
Our projects in East Cleveland, like we bought a house for $35,000,
Yes.
Now we put about $35,000 into it to fix it all up and everything. So, it is for us a $70,000 house that will go on the market eventually for, as much as 120 to 150, something like that, right? But the point is that there's definitely opportunity here. I want to talk also a little bit about, I guess, one of the factors of those like super duper low prices. I don't want to scare people. It's not because the neighborhoods are so dangerous and it's so awful here. There's actually like a really interesting financial sort of issue going on here that, I don't know if you have any thoughts on, that it's a lot of so in order to buy a house that needs a lot of renovation, you need to do what's typically called a hard money loan. Now, hard money lenders have certain limits on what they'll do, and the lower limit for a lot of them, at least like the big national names and all that, is $100,000. If your house is worth just shy of $100,000, they won't lend on it if it needs work. So no one can afford to buy it unless they bring all cash. Well, what happens then? If your house can be worth $99,000, but if it's unfinanceable, then all of a sudden the value drops to like $40,000 or $50,000 because that's the limit, the point at which people with cash are able to start looking at it and thinking, okay, I'll consider that. So I look around here and I see all these houses that are available for literally half of what they should be worth, purely because of like a little, I guess, like technicality in how financing works.
Yes. That's correct. And there are some, I honestly, I can't say that there are many remedies for that right now, but it's something that we're well aware of.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the mayorship. I don't want to get into all the drama and all that stuff like that, but you were an interim mayor for about 4 months.
Correct.
And
4.5.
4.5 months. And from literally everyone I've spoken to, you enacted a startling amount of progress and change in that amount of time, which may have actually earned you a few enemies. But overall, with the people of East Cleveland are excited about you and excited to see what you could do with, several years of time,
Sure.
Maybe many years of time, right? And, talk to me a little bit about, I guess, what are some of the tools and levers that a mayor has that, can help to make things better?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to have a strong staff, a strong and knowledgeable staff. that's interested in bettering the city and willing to work with the mayor in order to develop longer-term strategic plans, right? Because without a plan, you really don't have much. It's scattershot, and that doesn't help anything at the end of the day, my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, number one, it is having a strong and intelligent staff, right? Well-trained. Secondly, it's having a plan. Developing a plan of action, identifying what the priorities are, and then building on those. And then number three, it is having, at the end of the day, having those connections throughout the community. Not only East Cleveland, of course, our neighbors, Cleveland, Euclid, Cleveland Heights, that sort of thing, to build on, to build successes together, right? Because these are neighboring communities, but also to have the confidence of our state leaders, our county leaders, our government officials, the federal government, being really kind of connected in a general way, right?
Sure,
and specifically knowing whom to go to or where to go for what resource. So as an example, again, we have a community development department, a couple of people in the department, working hard. The previous administration was not particularly interested in working with and through HUD and what they had to offer.
Oh, sure.
And so it was an opportunity to say, let's explore more. Let's reach out and talk to the people, both in Cleveland, in Columbus, and federally, and understand what it is that's available to us and how we can use the funds that we have currently, and how we can get additional funds. I mean, the guru of HUD, Marcia Fudge, is right here in Cleveland, right? She is from Northeast Ohio. And so why wouldn't we want to take advantage of her insights and leverage her connections, when she's willing to share them, and she is, you know what I'm saying? But
of course,
why not leverage that to work with us? And so, there's a lot of railroads that come through Northeast Ohio and come through East Cleveland in particular. Having connections to the railroad and understanding, who owns the tracks and what their obligations are, in terms of maintaining those tracks, how should they be, sending trains through East Cleveland so that they're not disturbing our residents, so that they're not destroying, the flora and the fauna of our community, that sort of thing. Just being connected and being thoughtful. There's a lot to consider. As we are embarking upon paving our streets, like redoing some of our streets, we're really fortunate that we received $20 million in funding from various entities, but the water utilities, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and Cuyahoga County, and even Enbridge, the gas company, they're doing a lot on our roads. It's one thing to repave the roads, but if the fundamental infrastructure under those roads isn't addressed, then in a couple of years, they're going to fall apart again. So we're taking the time now to address the infrastructure, right? To replace water, sewer, and in some cases, gas pipes before we repave. But before we repave, let's take a look at the street and reimagine what that street should look like. So, one street that is being worked on right now, Hayden Avenue, is one of our main thoroughfares. And it, to me, it looks like Spaghetti Junction, right? I mean, it's not particularly well engineered for the current needs, current traffic needs. So let's re-engineer that street in a way that it is easier to drive on, that you can see the street signs, more efficiently, and that we create both hardscapes and landscapes. And specifically, can we plant more trees? Can we plant bushes? Can we make it more inviting so that people who are pedestrians walking on that street have a much better experience, so that drivers have a safer experience.
Sure.
Pedestrians too, by the way. That, I mean, there's a school on that street, so that our school children are able to cross the street more efficiently and without worrying about getting hit. You know, all those sorts of things. So reimagining our streets, reimagining one at a time, quite frankly, you know, to make it a more appealing and family-friendly place to live. And again, planting trees. Trees do a whole lot for us. I know that there are a lot of people who just think, what do we care? Trees or no trees, you know, but trees are important to the environment. They're important to water drainage. You know, they're important to keeping cleaner air and literally keeping the temperature down in our communities. And so, you know, it's a small thing, but it's an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and when you say you're working on the streets like one at a time, you're way underselling what's going on out there right now. You know, I mean, like I drove that, I thought, like, is the entire city's road under construction
seems like
right
it,
now?
doesn't it? Yeah.
You know, like it was just, and I was very confused. I was like, why would you work on every road at the same time? Like, why not just work on one road at a time? And I didn't realize how deep the infrastructure improvements are going, that you have such a holistic view of trying to tackle, you know, not just the plumbing for this house or this street or whatever. You're tackling the plumbing of East Cleveland.
Correct.
And, you know, like, and then making sure like the gas lines are updated and everything, so that you're not like paving new roads. Because, you know, what I've heard, like what the people see, what they experience is like, oh, fixing those potholes, right? Well, fixing a pothole doesn't really matter that much if you're going to be digging it up next week to be able to replace a pipe.
Precisely.
And, you know, all that. So, I mean, it's startling and amazing to see essentially what it really means to redo the infrastructure of a city, you know,
writ large. Well, and you know, the other thing is that internet connectivity in East Cleveland is spotty at best, right? And so in working with AT&T, we're bringing high-speed, you know, connectivity throughout the city, which is going to be fantastic. I mean, they're working on it now, and putting together all of this infrastructure. At the end of the day, having a modern infrastructure that not only meets the needs of you know 2025, but that meets the needs of 2075. You know, kind of thinking ahead to what will we need going into the future. What should we embed into, you know, when we are repaving, what should be embedded underneath the paving, right? So working towards intelligent transportation systems, working on the Internet of Things. What can we anticipate over the next 50 years that we'll need in our city? You know, what are the new innovations? Can we even you know, anticipate what those will be? Quite frankly, no. But we can plan at least 10, 20 years out, right? And embed all of that technology underground right now, so that the next time we have to go through this exercise, you know, they can upgrade. But for right now, we can anticipate what will be needed in our city from a technological perspective for the next 20, 25, maybe even 50 years. And also, you know, we're putting together infrastructure that will support business development and home development. Without strong, solid infrastructure, modern infrastructure, we can't expect businesses to come in and do all of it.
You know, I think some people may have had questions at the beginning of this interview about, I guess, what business does an international trade advisor have being a mayor of a city? And I think it's pretty clear the way you envision the city is as a hub of business, trade, and investment, and many different stakeholders needing to be, I guess, persuaded to be involved, to see the opportunities here, and to essentially execute on all of that in a way that is as similar to business as it is to understanding how to shape communities and rally people to your aid, and you know, pushing a great vision and a great dream. So I mean, I think you've made that very clear.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and yes, I mean, again, I see not through rose-colored glasses, but very clear-eyed, the opportunities that are available to us here in East Cleveland. You know, we're a diamond in the rough, but a diamond nonetheless. And I think that there's just so much upside to being in this community and growing this community. I think, you know, I may not be here to see it, but 50 years from now, this is going to be an incredible place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This is Sandra Morgan. She is running for mayor of East Cleveland. So, you know, if you are a resident of the area, you know, keep an eye on her. There's, tell me when the
We have a primary election on September 9th, and then the general election is November 4th.
Absolutely.
I'll be there.
Awesome. Fantastic. Sandra, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.